Colonel Newsom, in your testimony, you pay a lot of attention to the strategic positioning of the FAS, and you reference how the island nations make up the rear of our deterrence posture in the first island chain and how they make up the power projection superhighway. The PRC has developed A2AD capabilities on the other side of the first island chain to protect its homeland. If the U.S. lost exclusive military rights among the FAS and China gained a military foothold, what would the deployment of its A2AD capabilities mean for freedom of movement and projection of our own military forces?
Once again, ma'am, if the map tells you a lot, these freely associated states, they are an area as big as the United States. And with the Chinese ensconced there, with long-range precision weapons, it would create a huge zone that you would have to either go around or deal with. You might have to fight your way through once again. And as was mentioned earlier, it's important to note also that the Chinese see this as a springboard to the east. And they are setting up the dual-use, potentially military infrastructure in Latin America. They've brought successive administrations, regimes onto their side, and one day the PLA will be operating in Latin America off the U.S. West Coast. So they're going east, actually, at the same time. But it's hard to overstate just what the problems that this would cause.
Well, it sounds like we'd have serious economic and trade impacts for the United States because this is such an important region for the world. Is it safe to say that this breakdown in the second island chain would do enough damage to our forward deployed deterrence that the PRC would be on a path to achieving regional dominance to serve as a base for global power projection?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Lum, Taiwan is a significant piece of the first island chain, and China is looking for openings and opportunities to break through that first island chain. We have rightfully discussed how military action is not the only mechanism in which this can be achieved, but through other tactics like political warfare, as you mentioned just a moment ago, Colonel, economic influence, trade war tactics, espionage, and more. Palau and the Marshall Islands give diplomatic recognition to Taiwan. Micronesia rejected a PRC proposed pact with 10 Pacific Island nations, which caused the PRC to shelve that particular plan. We have strong allies in the freely associated states, and this Congress must recognize the mutual benefit in this agreement. Yet, as you testified, the PRC's influence in the region is most likely growing. Dr. Lum, in your written testimony, you included a map of the Pacific Islands and the Southwest Pacific subregions. We can see that in the Micronesia subregion are all three of the freely associated states as well as some of our territories. And in this subregion, in the Melanesia subregion, which borders it, is Kiribati and the Solomon Islands. Can you detail for us some recent developments with these two island nations when it pertains to growing Chinese influence?
Are you referring to Kiribati and?
Yes.
What was the other country?
Solomon Islands.
Okay. And Ms. Pascal could also talk about the Solomon Islands. Kiribati, I would say, and then maybe I'll defer to Ms. Pascal. For Kiribati, it's an interesting case. There is an airfield that China is helping to build or upgrade. And also for Kiribati is an interesting case because it has switched back and forth, recognized China, and there was a sort of military installation back in the early 2000s, then went to Taiwan, and then switched back to China. So it shows how easy it could be for some countries to go back and forth without a lot of consequences.
Instability and volatility, it sounds like. Mm-hmm. Ms. Pascal, if you could speak about the Solomon Islands.
Yeah, sure. So in both cases, what you see China do when it goes into a country is that they have a term called the three warfare. So they go after the institutions that undermine, that enable democracy to happen. So they go after the media, and you can see them doing that in places like the Solomons, where there's articles coming out about how somebody who still supports Taiwan actually met up with the Americans in Taiwan to put together a hit squad to kill the prime minister. It's completely fallacious, but they're setting up a case for the second thing, which is lawfare, which is to put their political opponents in power. And in Kiribati, what you saw, one of the first things they did when they switched was they went after the independent judiciary. So now they have the Attorney General being Chief Justice, I think. And then the third is psychological warfare, which is they instill fear in the population to make sure that they don't try to counter. So you're seeing a fundamental transformation in both Solomons and Kiribati of the nature of the society from a free, democratic, open society to increasingly authoritarian and effectively a metastasization of the CCP system, a Hong Kongization of those islands very, very quickly. They started in 2019 and they've gotten very far, very fast.
Okay, that's extremely helpful information. I am out of time, but I appreciate you explaining those points. Thank you.